What if the biggest Real Housewives scandal we've heard about so far isn't actually about an affair, but about the evidence someone allegedly kept hidden for months? According to the explosive claims in the story, PK has finally broken his silence after a relationship allegedly collapsed under accusations of betrayal, financial pressure, and secret recordings. The transcript describes a confrontation between PK and Dorit that allegedly became physical, with PK reportedly accusing her of destroying his life, while claiming he had sacrificed financially to maintain their lifestyle. But the alleged confrontation is only where this story begins. The biggest question isn't simply what happened between PK and Dorit. It's what PK allegedly has in his possession. The story claims there are messages, recordings, financial documents, hotel records, and other evidence that could potentially change the entire narrative surrounding PK, Dorit, Mauricio, and Kyle. And if even part of those allegations were ever substantiated, the consequences could extend far beyond one marriage. Then comes the twist that makes the claims even more explosive. The transcript alleges that a longer recording may exist, one that could reveal what was allegedly happening behind the scenes before everything erupted. But there's one major problem. How much of this alleged evidence is real, and how much is simply another layer of Beverly Hills rumor and speculation? Because while social media may already be choosing sides, the real story could depend on what can actually be proven. And if PK really does have the evidence he reportedly claims to have, the next reveal could completely change how everyone sees the scandal. So, before we get into the alleged recordings, the financial claims, and the accusations surrounding Mauricio and Dorit, let's go back to the moment when everything supposedly started falling apart. For years, PK and Dorit appeared to have the kind of Beverly Hills lifestyle that most people could only imagine. Luxury homes, designer fashion, expensive vacations, high-profile friendships, red carpet appearances, and, of course, the cameras of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills capturing pieces of their glamorous world. From the outside, everything looked polished. But according to the allegations presented in the source transcript, there was a very different story developing behind closed doors. The transcript portrays PK as a man who allegedly believed he had sacrificed an enormous amount to maintain the lifestyle he and Dorit had built together. It claims that properties were sold, loans were taken out, savings were drained, and significant financial pressure allegedly accumulated while trying to support an expensive lifestyle. And that is where the first major question begins. Was PK simply struggling with the financial demands of a high-profile marriage, or did he eventually begin to believe that he had sacrificed everything for someone who is no longer protecting their relationship? The source transcript claims that resentment had been building for a long time. At the same time, another relationship was allegedly becoming increasingly important to the story: Mauricio. For years, Mauricio had been connected to Kyle Richards, and their marriage had become one of the most talked about relationships surrounding the Beverly Hills reality TV world. Their personal struggles eventually became public, creating a complicated backdrop for everyone involved. Dorit and Kyle had also experienced their own tensions over the years. Their friendship had reportedly gone through periods of closeness, conflict, accusations, and emotional distance. On television, viewers saw disagreements and uncomfortable moments. But the transcript takes those existing tensions and makes a much more serious allegation: that Dorit and Mauricio had allegedly developed a secret romantic relationship. That claim is central to the entire story, but it is important to understand that the transcript itself presents these events as allegations and supposed insider claims, not independently verified facts. Still, within the narrative, the alleged affair becomes the turning point. The transcript claims that PK remained silent for months.
Why?
That silence is one of the most intriguing parts of the story. Because when someone hears rumors about their spouse, there are several ways they can respond. They can confront the situation immediately. They can walk away. They can publicly deny everything. Or they can remain quiet while privately trying to understand what is actually happening. The source portrays PK as choosing the last option. According to the allegations, he was watching, listening, and collecting information. And if the transcript is to be believed, he wasn't simply hearing rumors. He was allegedly gathering evidence, messages, recordings, financial information, travel details, and other material that he supposedly believed could reveal what had been happening behind his back. That changes the emotional dynamic completely. Because suddenly, this isn't just a story about a marriage falling apart. It's a story about someone allegedly sitting in silence while believing that the person closest to him was building another life. And the longer that silence continued, the greater the alleged resentment became. The transcript repeatedly returns to one central accusation. PK allegedly believed he had sacrificed financially for Dorit while she was simultaneously becoming involved with another man. Whether those claims are ultimately proven or not, that alleged belief is what supposedly pushed the relationship toward its breaking point. And then there was the financial side. The source describes PK as allegedly feeling that he had become responsible for maintaining a lifestyle that was becoming increasingly difficult to afford. Designer clothing, luxury vacations, expensive properties, and the expectations surrounding Beverly Hills celebrity culture all became part of the narrative. Imagine believing that you're taking on debt and making major financial sacrifices to protect your family, only to later suspect that the person you're doing it for may be planning a future without you. That is the emotional foundation the transcript uses to explain PK's alleged anger. But the story becomes even more complicated because of Kyle and Mauricio. According to the source, Kyle's marriage to Mauricio was already under enormous public scrutiny. Their relationship had become a major storyline, and every new rumor created another wave of speculation. Then Dorit became connected to that story. And suddenly, people were caught inside one enormous web of alleged betrayal, friendship, marriage, and financial conflict.
PK,
Dorit, Mauricio, and Kyle. The transcript suggests that these relationships were not separate problems. They were connected. If the alleged affair existed, it would not simply affect PK and Dorit. It would also affect Mauricio and Kyle. Friendships could collapse. Families could become divided. Business relationships could become complicated. And every person involved would have to decide how much of their private life they were willing to expose publicly. That is why the alleged evidence becomes so important. Because rumors can be denied. Accusations can be dismissed. But actual evidence, if it exists and can be authenticated, could potentially change the entire conversation. And according to the transcript, PK allegedly believed he had exactly that. The source claims that he had been quietly preserving messages and other material for months. But there is another possibility that makes this story even more fascinating. What if PK wasn't simply collecting evidence after discovering the alleged affair? What if he had already suspected something long before the confrontation? That would mean his silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Again, that is an interpretation of the narrative presented in the transcript, not a confirmed fact. But it explains why the story portrays the eventual confrontation as so explosive. Because after months of alleged suspicion, financial frustration, and emotional pressure, PK supposedly reached a point where remaining silent was no longer possible. And that is when everything changed. According to the source, the confrontation happened privately. The argument allegedly began with accusations and denials. But the transcript claims that PK eventually confronted Dorit with what he believed was evidence of the alleged relationship. That evidence supposedly included messages, recordings, hotel information, and other records. The source then describes the confrontation becoming physical, with PK allegedly slapping Dorit. That allegation is extremely serious, and it should not be treated as justified simply because someone feels betrayed. Cheating allegations, financial disputes, and relationship problems never make physical violence acceptable. And that is exactly why the alleged confrontation becomes such a controversial part of the story. Because there are now two separate questions. What allegedly happened inside the marriage? And what happened during the confrontation? Those questions should not be confused. Someone can feel betrayed and still be completely wrong to become violent. At the same time, allegations of betrayal do not automatically become true simply because they are repeated online. And this is where the story reaches its first major cliffhanger. Because according to the transcript, the alleged slap wasn't the biggest thing PK had. The biggest thing was supposedly what came next. The source claims PK had additional recordings and documents that he was considering releasing. If those materials actually exist, the question becomes whether they can be authenticated, what they really show, and whether they tell the story being claimed online. And that is where this Beverly Hills drama could move from celebrity gossip into something much more serious. Because once private recordings enter the picture, everyone involved has something to lose. And according to the narrative presented in the transcript, PK was allegedly no longer interested in staying silent. He had supposedly reached the point where he wanted his side of the story heard. But before those alleged recordings could change the narrative, one confrontation would become the moment everyone remembered. And that confrontation is where the story truly begins to explode. The tension had been building for months. At least, that's how the story presented in the transcript unfolds. What began as rumors and private suspicion allegedly turned into something much more serious when PK confronted Dorit about what he believed was happening behind his back. According to the source material, this wasn't supposed to be another ordinary relationship argument. PK allegedly came prepared. The transcript claims he had gathered messages, recordings, hotel information, flight records, and other documents that he believed supported his suspicions. Whether those materials actually exist or prove the allegations is a separate question, but within the narrative, PK believed he finally had enough evidence to confront Dorit directly. And that confrontation allegedly happened behind closed doors. Imagine the atmosphere. Two people who had spent years building a public life together are suddenly sitting across from each other, with accusations involving another marriage, money, trust, and the future of their family hanging over the conversation. According to the transcript, PK allegedly presented what he considered evidence. The source claims Dorit initially denied the accusations. Then, according to the allegations, PK played a recording. That supposed recording became one of the most dramatic elements of the entire story. The transcript claims it contained a conversation involving Dorit and Mauricio. It alleges that the recording suggested they had been discussing their future and even making plans that could affect Kyle. But again, these are claims contained in the source transcript. No independent verification is provided for the alleged recording, and that distinction matters. Still, within the story, the alleged recording was the moment everything supposedly changed. The transcript describes Dorit as becoming silent after hearing the recording. PK allegedly believed that silence confirmed his worst fears. And that's when the confrontation supposedly escalated. The source claims PK began accusing Dorit not only of betraying him emotionally, but also of financially taking advantage of him. His alleged argument was simple but devastating. He believed he had sacrificed financially to provide the lifestyle Dorit wanted while she was allegedly preparing for a future with someone else. According to the transcript, PK allegedly accused himself of having sold property, taken on debt, and made enormous sacrifices to maintain their lifestyle. That financial accusation adds another layer to the story. Because relationship betrayal is one thing, financial betrayal is something else entirely. When money, property, debt, and business interests become part of a marriage, separation can become much more complicated. Every accusation carries potential consequences beyond hurt feelings. And according to the source narrative, PK believed he had been carrying that burden for years. Then came the moment that transformed the entire story. The transcript alleges that PK slapped Dorit. That allegation should be treated with extreme caution because the source provides no independently verified evidence establishing that the incident occurred as described. But the alleged slap becomes central to the narrative because it immediately changes the conversation. Before that moment, the story is about alleged cheating. After that moment, it becomes a discussion about violence, accountability, anger, and responsibility. And those are not interchangeable issues. Even if someone believes they have been betrayed, physically attacking another person is not justified. That is an important distinction because the transcript itself portrays an internet audience becoming divided over the alleged incident. Some viewers, according to the narrative, focused almost entirely on the alleged betrayal and financial claims. Others focused on the alleged physical violence and argued that no amount of relationship betrayal can justify putting hands on someone. And that division would become one of the biggest drivers of the controversy. But the transcript doesn't stop there. It claims the confrontation was allegedly recorded. And if that were true, it would create an entirely different situation. Because suddenly, people wouldn't just be debating what they heard from PK or Dorit. They would potentially be watching or listening to an alleged recording of the confrontation itself. According to the source, an audio clip supposedly began circulating online, featuring PK allegedly shouting that his life had been destroyed. The phrase became the emotional centerpiece of the story. But the bigger question was, who recorded it? The transcript suggests that someone inside the home may have captured the argument. That raises another important question. Was the recording authentic? Was it complete? Had it been edited? And who allegedly leaked it? Without answers to those questions, an audio clip alone cannot establish everything the story claims. Yet online, those distinctions can disappear very quickly. A dramatic clip gets posted. People react. Other accounts repeat the allegations. Then another account adds another detail. Within hours, speculation can start looking like fact. And that's exactly the environment in which this story supposedly exploded. According to the transcript, the alleged confrontation quickly became an internet sensation. But then came an even bigger claim. The source alleges that PK had additional evidence. Not just one recording. Not just messages. The transcript claims he allegedly had months of communications, financial information, hotel records, and other material. If authentic and legally obtained, such evidence could potentially provide context. But it would still need to be independently verified before anyone could confidently conclude what actually happened. And then the narrative takes another dramatic turn. The transcript introduces an allegation that Dorit and Mauricio had supposedly taken their relationship much further than anyone knew. It even makes claims involving a secret marriage and a pregnancy. Those are extremely serious allegations, and the source does not provide independent evidence establishing them. That means they should remain exactly what they are, unverified claims within the transcript. But from a storytelling perspective, these allegations dramatically raise the stakes. Because if such claims were ever proven, the entire relationship timeline would have to be reconsidered. Suddenly, the alleged affair would no longer be the only question. People would want to know when it allegedly began. Who knew? Who didn't know? What did PK allegedly discover? And why would he supposedly remain silent for so long? The transcript suggests that PK had been quietly collecting information because he wanted to protect his children and avoid publicly destroying his family. Again, that's the source's narrative, not an independently established fact. But it creates an important emotional question. How long can someone remain silent when they believe they have been betrayed? A week? A month? A year? And what happens when silence finally turns into confrontation? According to the transcript, PK's alleged breaking point came when he believed he had discovered the full extent of what was happening. That is where the story shifts from suspicion to alleged revenge. The source claims PK was no longer interested in simply ending the relationship. He allegedly wanted the truth exposed. And that's when the supposed evidence became the most important part of the story. Because if PK really had the messages and recordings he allegedly claimed to possess, releasing them could potentially affect far more than his relationship with Dorit. It could affect Mauricio. It could affect Kyle. It could affect friendships throughout the Beverly Hills circle. And it could potentially create legal consequences depending on what the evidence actually contained and how it was obtained. But there was another problem. Once accusations become public, there is no easy way to put the story back into private life. Every statement can be analyzed. Every photograph can be re-examined. Every old interview can suddenly look different. And every person involved can become part of a much larger public debate. That is exactly what the transcript says happened next. The alleged recording spread. The accusations spread. People began choosing sides. And the central question became increasingly difficult to avoid. Was PK finally exposing a betrayal he had allegedly been hiding for months? Or was an already chaotic relationship being transformed into an even bigger online spectacle through unverified claims? The answer matters. Because this isn't simply entertainment anymore.